want to talk about something that I think that you'll find to be interesting as well as somewhat challenging to some of the kind of things that we hear. How many of you, or let's say, what do you think when someone says the word consequences to you? Consequences. How does that make you feel when you hear the word consequences? Well, you know, those laughs of recognition are pretty interesting because when people hear consequences, they think of something that's negative. But you realize that consequences are as positive as they are negative. They're no more negative than they are positive. The difference is that between those two things is just what God has given us, and that's choice. To be able to live in between my consequences or my consequences. But everything has consequences. Bad things, of course, have bad consequences. And some of us have experienced some of those things, but good things have good consequences just as well. You see, life is filled with a number of different laws that govern us. There are things that govern everything that we do, whether we realize it or whether we don't. There are these invisible things or laws that govern life. One of such law is really the law of gravity. You don't really realize, but gravity really kind of governs everything. You're able to walk on the ground. You're able to actually jump off a table, if that's what you want to do. You can jump up and down, and people are actually judged or celebrated over how that they can really defy the law of gravity. That's how they're defined, on how high that they can get off the ground, having really defied that law, which governs us. Actually, even in martial arts, really people who've done martial arts understand that really the law of gravity is the law that is always obeyed. You don't really do anything off balance. You make sure that you have your center of gravity in its correct place, and then you can actually use your power from that place of gravity. You know, everything, like I said, has consequences. Some good, some bad, some indifferent. But remember this, you and I being prisoners of time, we actually are able to count the successes or the failures of our consequences. You know, here's the oldest joke in all of history. A guy goes into the doctor's office, right? When he goes into the doctor's office, he says, "Doctor," he says, "it hurts when I do that." What did the doctor say? So it's the same with life. Quit doing it. If something hurts, stop it. Now, talking about consequences, it's pretty interesting, is that God actually spoke to the serpent. Now, let me just ask you a question. What did the serpent say that was so wrong? I mean, really. He said to the girl, he says to her, he says, did God say that you won't eat of every tree in the garden? She said, we're not going to eat of any tree of the garden, and the tree that's in the middle of the garden, God told us not to eat it, neither should we touch it, lest we die. And he said, God didn't say that you would die. He didn't lie. But God said to him, he says, you know what? You led that person. You led them into a place that brought consequences. He said, so there's consequences for what you do. Now, you have to understand consequences. Much like the consequence of gravity, of jumping out of an airplane without a parachute, you know, just a whole bunch of things that defy that law. The same way that those things happen are the same way that God speaks. He didn't speak like, I'm really mad at you, and because I'm mad at you, this is what you get. He didn't do that. What God did was he let them know what would happen. You go here, this is what happens. You go there, this is what happens. You know, if what you do is that you keep going to places that do things that you don't want to do, guess what happens? What happened? What's the consequence of going where you don't want to do the things that are done there? What are the consequences? You start doing them. So guess what? Just like at the doctor's office, don't go there. It's that simple. You want to avoid the consequences of it, then don't go there. It's real simple. There are consequences in every situation that we're in. If what you do is that you live your life with a husband that actually, basically, he wants to tell you about how great of a Christian that he is, and what he does is he actually does everything as a non-Christian, but's telling you how great it is, and he doesn't speak words of love. He actually speaks words of manipulation, control, and hatred, yet he's trying to hold you to something that he himself doesn't do. What is he? What consequence does he get? Does he get a wife that is everything that God wants her to be? He doesn't. As a matter of fact, what he gets is the very thing that he spoke to. He spoke into manipulation and control. Guess what he gets? Manipulated, and he gets controlled. When he speaks to her with words of hatred instead of words of love, she will outwardly express words of love because she wants the relationship to continue, but inwardly, she's becoming more bitter every day. She gets the consequence of it. So the same way that at the doctor's office, then just don't go where you don't want to go. And what he told the serpent was this. In Genesis chapter 4, Genesis 3, verse 14, so the Lord God said to the serpent, because you've done this, that's as far as I want to go with it. He said, because you have done this, this is what happens. He then goes to the woman, and he says to the woman right from there, he says to her actually, he says, to the man. Let's go to the man first. Let's stay with the notes. He said then to the man in verse 17, he said then to Adam, he said, because you've heeded the voice of your wife. Because you've heeded a voice. Now, it's not so bad, heeding the voice of your wife. As a matter of fact, in many things, Linda's a lot smarter than I am. That isn't even the question. But what happened was that when you go down for your answers instead of go up, there's consequences. When you ask the right question to the wrong person, there's consequences. She's not bad. She's awesome. But what happened to her? All of a sudden, God said to her, he said, now because you, next to the woman, actually, I may not even have her there. Stop that. I'm trying to remember this. So I'm giving you more things because I've thought more things since I wrote this. But to the woman, what he says this. He said, and because of what's happening with you, pain in childbirth is what you get. How many of you girls understand that? You get it? It can be painful. He said, that's what you get. He said, you remember this. That's what you get. Now, why did she get that? Because she listened to the wrong voice. Why did Adam get it? Because he listened to the wrong voice. Don't you remember when God actually came to Cain on the side of the road and he said to him, he said, Cain, he said, why are you so depressed? He said, if you do what's right, you'll get the right stuff. But if you don't do what's right, you won't get the right stuff. Because there are consequences to everything. But to us, in Galatians chapter 6, verse number 7, he said here, don't be deceived. He said, don't be deceived. Now remember, what did the serpent do in the beginning? He deceived her. So he said, now look, you don't be deceived. You can't make a fool out of what God said. You can't. You can't change it. You can't just decide to gather all the opinions that you want to and then decide what you think is right. He said, don't be deceived. You can't make a fool out of God. He said, for whatever a man sows, that what? So consequences aren't bad. Consequences just are. Decisions are right, and decisions are not right. And whichever way that you fall off will determine the consequence that comes. So here, I want to give you a few things that really are the laws that govern life. They actually govern us. They govern our futures. They govern our relationships. They'll govern every part of what you know about. And so let's begin. Here's number one. It's the law of focus. In the law of focus here, we find that the law of focus tells us this. It says that your focus will inevitably determine your results. Whatever you focus on, that's ultimately what's going to bring you the results that you want or the results that you don't. But focus determines one thing or the other. What are you looking at? What gets your time? What gets your attention? Because your focus determines your results. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 4, beginning with verse 20, here God gives us these understandings. Now, one of the things that we have to realize about our relationship with God is this, is that first is that God created us. Got it? Okay. You're not God. Me neither. He's God, and we're not. Remember the two things are true? Number one is what? Say it. There is a God. Number two? I'm not him. Okay, as long as you figured that out, that there is a God, and you're not him, that kind of starts the whole issue that we face. But now remember, God created man in his image, but from the moment that he created him, from that moment forward, man has done everything that he could do to create God in his. From the time that God created us in his image, from that moment, we've done everything that we could possibly do to create him in ours. So here we have it. He said, my son, attend to my words. Attend to them. That's what gives your attention. That's what it gets. My words need to get your attention. He said, incline your ear to my sayings. To my sayings. Mine. He said, let them not depart from before your eyes. Keep them always in front of you. He said, and then keep them in the midst of your heart, because they're life to those who find them. Inside of God's word is every bit of life that you need. It's not being able to just see it, because there are 1,189 chapters. There's 32, or what is it, 750,000 words in the Bible. It's there. But that's not it. Is that in every one of the things that you see, there is a key hidden inside there. And he said, now look, keep them in the midst of your heart, for their life to those who find them, and their health to all of their flesh. The problems that people have that they don't even realize is that they have flesh problems. These flesh problems have to do with my pain, I'm hurt, you hurt me, you lied to me, you this to me, you that to me. And what happens is that his words are health, where all that sickness tries to find its way inside you. He said there in verse number 24, verse 24, he said this. He said, let your eyes look right on, or verse 25, let your eyes look right on and let your eyelids look straight before you. So now we see that to be true. One thing I don't want to pass up that I did pass up, and that was this, is that I want to talk to you for just a second before I go to number 2 about reality. One of the biggest problems that people have, especially in the church, is reality. They don't deal with reality. Reality is a huge, huge deal. They lie to themselves all the time. And having done what I've done for as long as I have, I can tell you this, is that I meet people, or let's say I met people when they were 25, and now they're 63, and they're the same. And the challenge that they have is they lack reality. They don't deal with where they're at. They pretend to others that they're at a different place that they are. I almost wanted to have a name tag. And on this name tag, I thought about this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to write this name tag and say, hello, you remember those ones that kind of stick on? Those ones there that you don't want to put on any of your clothes, you just end up happening that way. And I thought of, hello, my name is reality. Have we met? Because most often people have never met reality. They don't meet reality until they finally come to a place where they are willing to stay somewhere long enough to not only have someone tell them the truth, but to tell themselves the truth. There's so much to say about this. Value. What is my value? My value isn't yesterday. My value is what I bring to you for tomorrow, not what I gave to you yesterday. So there is a small truth of, well, what have you done for me lately? Because my value is going forward. My value isn't going backwards. So number two, it's the law of value. The law of value. Now, this law here, and you have to remember that laws really, and there are about 6 or 7 different definitions of the word law, and none of them are really true. They cannot define law. Other than, it just so happens to be words that are spoken or written that become binding in any society. Without laws in a society, there's utter pandemonium. Without two people agreeing with what they agree about, it just doesn't work. Because one person will keep them and another person will not. And you have to remember that your life is really determined not by the person who keeps the law, it's really determined by the person who breaks it. Thus, it must tell you that your life is not determined by the greatest people you know. It's really dismantled by the worst people that you know. You understand that? That's why you must minimize the wrong people. So number 2 is the law of value. And the principle that we have for the law of value is this, is that any or whatever value that you place, can you give me that please? The value you place upon anything in life is immediately revealed by the price that you're willing to pay for it. If you want to know what a person values, just see what they're willing to pay for it. A person can't tell you that they value you and not be willing to pay the price that it costs to be near you. Know that that's true. Now, let me just explain something to you about reality. Reality is not happy. But now remember, happiness is a choice. Sadness is a choice. Wellness is a choice. Depression is a choice. All of these things are choices. I choose to be happy. You cannot, I will not give you the power to determine whether I'm happy or unhappy. You must never put that over into the hands of someone else. And so I understand that. But there's something about truth. And remember this. In life, there is nothing more depressing than truth. The most depressing things you'll ever hear in your life aren't children that are molested or taken away. The most depressing thing that you will ever hear has to do with finally telling yourself the truth. The most sober that you will ever be and in contact with yourself will be the moment that you tell you what the truth really is. So the value that you place upon anything is immediately revealed by the price that you're willing to pay for it. There was a woman in Luke chapter 7. This woman was the woman who actually was kind of an outsider, but she was a person who must have been allowed. She had to be allowed because people that were outsiders have to be able to see what's going on inside of this religious man Simon's home. And he came into, or he actually had this courtyard, and everyone was allowed to be able to come into the courtyard to see this dinner guest that he had had. His name was Simon, and he asked Jesus to come for dinner. And he said to Jesus, he said, or actually she came in, and she broke the spikenard. She poured the perfume upon Jesus, on his feet. She washed his feet with her tears, dried them with her hair, and then anointed him with this perfume. Judas got upset. He didn't see Jesus as valuable. He said, why couldn't we have taken this perfume and given it to the poor? Jesus said, the poor you have with you always, but not me. Never forget that. Poor you have with you always. There's always something to do, but you rarely ever have the opportunity to do what you can do with others. Secondly, is that Simon says to himself, if this guy was really a prophet, he would have known who this woman was. He would have known that she was really someone who shouldn't be touching him. And Jesus said to him, he said, Simon, he said, I have something to ask you. And Simon said, feel free to speak, Jesus. He said, there were two men. One owed his master 50 days' wages. The other one owed his master 500 days' wages. When neither one of them could pay him back, he decided to be able to forgive them both. Which then, Simon, do you believe? Which one of them do you believe loved his master more? And Simon said, well, the one that was forgiven more. And Jesus looked at the woman and said to Simon, from the time I came into your house, this woman has not ceased washing my feet with her tears and drying them with her hair. She has not stopped speaking to me words of love. She anointed me for burial. Simon, since I've been here, you haven't given me anything to wash my face with, or my feet. You gave me no cloth to do anything. He said, Simon, her sins, which are many, are forgiven. For he that has been forgiven much loves much. Because the value that you place upon anything is revealed by the price you're willing to pay for it. She was willing to pay everything. He was willing to pay nothing. There's nothing more depressing in life than the truth. And Simon just came to the truth. Simon, there are consequences. Her sins, which are many, are forgiven. You will never see Simon. Number four. Was that number three? That was number two? Well, let's do number three then. The law of discipline. Interesting, the law of disciplines. Discipline is not a negative word. People have the idea, whether it be with children or whether it be in any type of sporting preparation or in home life. People have the idea that discipline is negative. Discipline isn't negative. Discipline is what sets parameters. Everything has disciplines. Everything. A business has disciplines. A marriage has disciplines. Sports have disciplines. Churches have disciplines. Christianity has disciplines. Everything has disciplines that it does. All that disciplines mean are the things that we do consistently in order to become successful at what we do. That's a discipline. When you discipline a child, you are not punishing the child. You are showing them the right way to do something. That's why when a person says disciplining in anger, that's because you weren't disciplining them, you were punishing them. So you have to understand that discipline has nothing to do with anger. Discipline is what you do in order to cause success. In any area of life, what sets two people apart inside of any room are the disciplines. One person hears something great, another person sits there and it's kind of like a guy going to a seminar. He spends $5,000 to go to the seminar. Tom will understand this. $5,000 to go to a seminar. What it is he spends $1,500 for his hotel room, and after he's got this $6,500 in it, after the seminar starts, he's sitting outside of the hall deciding which one of the classes for the seminar that he wants to go to, because there's no disciplines.
If you are in the Chicago area, we would love for you to join any of our services. We have a 5 p.m. service on Saturdays, and on Sundays we have a 9:30 a.m. and 5 p.m. service. We also have midweek services on Wednesday at 7:15 p.m. at locations around Chicago and Northwest Indiana. To find out more about FHC, like us on Facebook or go to our website at fhclife.org. To partner with RTM, visit robthompson.org/partner or call our office at 708-614-6000. We look forward to seeing you very soon.